Welcome to this Liga Talk video. The video is about bad things that can happen. And bad things, absolutely, they do happen. The video here today is about ransomware attacks, identity management, it's about Microsoft Active Directory, and it's about for any enterprise of any size. The session, I will try to add afterthoughts to what could have been done differently with the tools that we have inside the Identity and Access Management toolbox. So this is what this session here and this Liga Talk here is about. So let's just jump into it. Just a bit about background about who I am. I'm Bjarke Alling. I'm a former co-chair and now also newly reappointed member of the National Danish Cybersecurity Council by the Danish government. I'm also chair of the IT Security Committee and member of the board of the Danish ICT Industry Association. And finally, I'm the founder and group director of the IT security software company Liga, and that's probably also why you came across this video. Just one more thing on this image here, because you were just probably wondering who's this guy there. Yeah, well, it goes long back. It's actually from year 99, and this image here is not about me. It's actually about the small blue box on the top, because that was one of the world's first appliances for internet connectivity. This small appliance from Cobalt Networks, back in the time, was a revolutionary unit that provided web access, mail access, file sharing, etc., etc. For many companies, one of the first mail servers that they ever had. So the story on ransomware, cybersecurity, everything that comes across that, for me personally, goes all the way back to 99 when we began delivering products with Liga into the market that serves everything that comes around internet. So just a bit background. Also, the session here, there's just a small disclaimer, and I will just read what the text says. The speaker, that's me, at this session has not been involved either directly or indirectly in the work and in the aftermath of any of the ransomware attacks described in this session. All of the information from the cases is based solely on data that is in the public domain. The opinions expressed in this session are solely me as speaker and do not reflect the opinions and beliefs of any other. Just to make sure that you do not believe that I share inside information here that should have been kept secret, etc. Everything here is literally found straight on the internet. Good. So, what can we learn? What could have been done differently? Yeah, and where will this bring us in the future fight against cyber attacks? The question, you can think about that when you see this video here. How many of you have made a company risk assessment on ransomware attacks? I know when I've done this presentation in a live audience, maybe 10, 15, 20% of the audience typically raise their hands. So the question here, you can ask yourself, have you done your risk assessment? I will definitely recommend you to do that. So in the session also, what I will cover here is a block structure. I just look into the identity management and access management, and in that there are kind of 3 blocks that I'm diving into. The first thing is the Active Directory directly. The second is external browser and API access. And finally, I'm looking into the user management, user account management. So first, I'd just like to take a small dip into the main issue. That's passwords. I'm going a little bit back here to a report from 2017 from Verizon. There are obviously also newer reports, but this one here is specifically very clear on a major issue that I'm highlighting. And this is the one that is framed here in the yellow box. 81% of hacking-related breaches leverage either stolen and/or weak passwords. Obviously, you can find other reports that point more or less to the same conclusion, but this one here is just specifically clear on the matter. Moving forward to secure authentication and two-factor methods. I think if you look at this screen here, you will find that we have kind of a high security, low security, convenient, and inconvenient. So if we look at the password and two-factor authentication. This provides high security, correct? So you type in your username, you type in your password, then you add your second factor authentication. No doubt it provides high security, but the convenience lacks a little bit. Looking down in the other corner here, low security but convenient, like here, it's the password. The big compromise between these two things when we're discussing high security and conveniency, that's the passwordless authentication. And in some cases also made nameless. I think that's a very interesting thing to when it comes to increase the security. Also looking a little bit on the kind of attack pattern on a ransomware. This attack, this document here is described by the Danish Center for Cybersecurity. It's in a document named The Autonomy of Targeted Ransomware Attacks, and I can definitely recommend you to go and read the document. There are multiple phases. I just want to give you highlight the most important phases in terms of when these breaches happens with ransomware against Active Directory. The initial phase here are the phishing attempts, drive-by, etc., supply chain. But look at the first one, phishing. Getting username, getting passwords, getting credentials. Then comes the next phase, lateral movements, which means that when I get access, and this is the way, I normally put this in a way of saying, it doesn't matter where in the balloon you put in the needle. But as soon as you have the hole, then you have the problem. And this is the way this works. So some attackers get inside to your company, they get whatever account it can be, and then they can start getting access. And then from that point, they can start moving laterally in your organization, and they can start stealing and gaining access to systems that are more critical than maybe from the system they originally did attack. Going further down this kind of autonomy of attack route, we will see persistency, saying using legitimate remote access tools. So if you have a weak access, public available, RDP access, bad functioning VPN, maybe just a login service somewhere, that's definitely a part of that attack vector. Privilege escalation to domain administrator. So now I have access to a Windows machine. Then it's a matter of figuring out how can I escalate, how can I get a higher level, and then from that point, then you are doomed. So steal credentials, guess password, everything that is in that pot, that's what an attacker is doing. Moving forward to some cases here. Back in 2017, many of you might have heard of the Maersk breach and the NotPetya. It came along again, Norsk Hydro and a Norwegian, more or less global company. We have William Demand, a Danish hearing aid company, and now in 2020 we had the ISS, the large cleaning and service company. They all suffered more or less the same attack. They were compromised on their Active Directory, and from there on, every problem just started occurring. So, my thoughts on mitigation: what could they have done? What could they? Yet again, keep back from my initial on this talk here. This is not about putting something and say, okay, they should have done, and if they have done. But these are just thoughts. Just think about these as an ideas that you can go back and have a look at your own network and say, okay, do we do this or do we do that? And this might mitigate some of those risks. So obviously, and maybe not obviously, but at least saying that straight on, network segregation. Split the networks into multiple segments and make sure that communication between the segments are isolated. That will help you a lot in terms of when an accident can happen. Directory segregation. Also split your Active Directory. Have multiple directories and then put a meta directory on the top. Those things are simple to implement. Tools exist already today to do that. Use meta directory principles. That's exactly what I said about the directory segregation. Use of multiple operating system platforms. There's no reason to have only Microsoft Windows in your environment, maybe consider having some Linux systems, spread that across, because the more systems you have, the more complicated the attack will be, and the more likely is that the attacker will maybe find somewhere else to go and then simply just leave your company. Obviously, also protection of your admin accounts. You need to protect these. It is straight simple. Make sure that you do not have people that has admin rights that should not have it. Make sure that limited the numbers of use. Set up the tools that can support that. And then use CM systems, locking systems, to monitor what goes on. It's surprising that many companies, they might have log files there, they might have log files there, but they do not have a centralized system. And there exist many of CM systems. You can buy large commercial products. In Liga, we sell parts of that, but there also exist some more open solutions. But the most important thing is that you have something that is centralized, where you at least can monitor that something is happening. Additional mitigation elements: offsite hot disaster recovery and continuously malware scanning of historic backup, antivirus and other exercises. So have tools in place where you have a fallback plan. Make sure, obviously, you have the best possible option of antivirus. The majority of antivirus companies today, they have tools that also prevent encryption and ransomware attacks in multiple ways. But unfortunately, we see, and I see, that some companies, they did not buy the big product, the top-notch product. They only bought the basic product. And unfortunately, that product did not provide this kind of functionality. I think it's somewhere there. It can be maybe. Yeah, I think about the money here. It can be well spent. And finally, exercises. Train your organization in the case that an attack is happening. Because this is not while the attack is going on that you should start inventing your processes. You should be prepared in advance, because it will happen at some given point that you will get under attack. Moving forward to external browser and API accesses. I have yet again found a few cases. You can go to Google, search for the cases. You can read about what are the content, what were happening on the given case. But there's a range of cases here. Hafnium, which was a case recognized here in Denmark, attacking the Exchange server due to some malfunction code in the deep level of web access, Outlook web access. Kaseya, also an API that caused a great cause of problems among especially the supermarket chain in Sweden and hundreds, I think actually thousands of other companies around the world. But you can go and look and try Google some of these cases. So what could these cases have done? What are the source again on mitigation? Proxy service. I think that's part of the Hafnium. So do not expose vulnerable APIs. Put in front, tools that are made for taking the attacks that comes from the internet, that can check for the URLs calls, that can block for given function. These tools exist already. API gateways, if you are using a specific API, also tools already exist on the market. IDS, IPS systems. They are, honestly quite complicated to configure. And they can be pain in the somewhere to actually also to do management on. But they save you a day. So it is worth spending time on getting these tools, learn the tools and use the tools, because they can save you on and prevent attacks. Mandatory trust, risk-based authentication. Make sure that when you establish your communication, there's a trust among the parties that communicate to each other. Make sure that you're not just accepting any given incoming communication, but put up in advanced tools that can look at that. And if you have risk-based authentication, you can even evaluate, say, okay, where does this connect come from? Is that from internal network, or from external network, or from some foreign country? Is there correlating between, everything in this case? You can monitor that. You can put up a mathematical equation and monitor what goes on. This is what risk-based authentication is all about. And then finally, rethink your concept of account. So look into what are your IoT accounts, your applications, your people. This is just not one big pot, separated back to the segregation also, and make sure that you have these things in a way that you can control what goes on. Moving forward to my last item in this small talk, the cases on user account management. We have some, actually a case where I were expert witness here in Denmark back in 2020. There's the very big one, I think most of you have heard of that, Colonial Pipeline, Brenntag, JBS, and others, and you'll find a lot of the ones. I think Colonial Pipeline, that was a VPN account that should have been deactivated many years ago, was not deactivated, and suddenly half the US East Coast could not get petroleum. So a small breach there had a giant consequence on the other side. So what are the mitigations? ID validation of any account. You should not have a user account in which you are not 100% sure that it's connected to a real human being. It sounds simple, and it is simple, but you need to do it. Passwordless login everywhere, including your VPN, the RDP, the Wi-Fi potentially, all of these things. Make sure that you do not have any kind of weak spots in your defense. Don't have and don't continue to work with systems where you have only username password access. Make sure that it goes all around, not only on your perimeter, but also start doing this on your inner networks. As just described, as soon as the attacker is inside your network, they can start lateral movement. And the lateral movement, then if you have a weak inside, then you would not be protected. Principle of last privilege. There's no reason to to put in the box that grant all access. It's also troublesome. It's also complicated. I know that. But please do that anyhow. Make sure that only people that need access get access. There's no reasoning that you as an IT person in your company has access to everything. Just limit your own access and just grant you your own access, because you are yourself is also one of the targets. So if your own account gets breached, then things can really turn bad. Real-time monitoring of login activities. Look into who is logging into your network. Typically these attacks, they take place covering a long timeline. This is not just one attack and then 2 hours later everything is doomed. No, they get access. Someone might even sell you access to someone else. So it can take months. So have a look at your login activity, monitor what goes on, who did log in where, is there any anomaly, is there someone logging in 3 o'clock in the morning that normally would only log in during daytime, etc. All of these things that is available in your network, things you can find already. Real-time user account integration to payroll systems. Have a system where you log in and where you connect your payroll with your user system. Do not wait until someone stops at the end of the month and then only 5 days later their account gets deactivated, or months or years later. In the Colonial Pipe case, I think that was an external consultant that had an account existing for years that has not been deactivated. Unfortunately, that consultant did reuse the password on multiple accounts, and that person was then breached. And then automated deprovisioning. I think everyone is agreed that it's easy to get people onboarded quickly and efficient. That's something we do. Of course, we want to have our new colleague start working. The problem comes when they deprovisioned, because then they stop at the end of the month. Okay, there's something on my list. I have that on my to-do. I will do that tomorrow. Tomorrow goes to next week, it goes to etc., etc., etc. And then suddenly you're up to that 2 months. And then you still have an open account. So get that to happen automatically. Tools exist to do that. So just wrap everything here together a little bit. The most important fundamental principle I will recommend you to go and have a more deep look into is the Zero Trust frameworks. It's described by the US NIST. It's also become more and more widely available from many vendors in the market. Looking a little bit down, you have also standards and regulations coming out of the ISO and ISAE agreements that we need to follow these guidelines, and these become certified against the standards. Those documents and the information there are valuable information for you, how to plan and structure and prioritize your efforts to obtain a better security. I think many of you are very familiar with GDPR. Many of you might not be familiar with the upcoming European standard for what is named NIS version 2, which will become nearly as complex and in the size also like GDPR was back when that went public. Now the NIS 2 comes and that will cover many industries. So go and have and study that. It will come. It will probably come into effect. I think it's 2024, and it will be a big area of legal compliance. And then I think many of you, especially the ones that works in financial sector, are familiar with PSD2. And for those of you that works in public sector, start to become familiar with the eIDAS regulation. That also delivers a lot of interesting insights and good ideas and practices for how you can structure your work in the area of getting better security. And I think with all of that, I just have one big plea left to you. Only knowledge with sharing. The only way we can become stronger, more resilient against the attacks is that we talk about it. So please communicate. If something happens to you, communicate in a way that of course should not put you in a bad position. This is not what I'm asking you about. But maybe communicate about after the attack, after you got your air back and you get up and walking again. Talk about what happened to you, how have you mitigated it, what did you do, what are your thoughts. Please share your information, because that's the only way that we as companies and the one that want to make sure that we become more strong and more resilient, that's the way we do it, is that we talk to each other and we learn from each other. So this is my very big plea to all of you. And I think with that, I just want to say thank you for listening here, and I will welcome you back on another Liga Talk, and you find it right here on our Vimeo channel. So yeah, please welcome back at a later point.